Hi, this is Kevin Trainer, and welcome to part two of the tutorial for the coding assignment for Zelle 3rd edition Python book chapter 1. And what we're going to do here, again, this is going to be a corollary to your exercise 2 on uh, your homework assignment. And in exercise 1, we created a new program from scratch. In exercise 2, we're going to take an existing program and we're going to modify it in order to change it around. And sometimes we do this, well, two use cases. Use case 1, our requirements have changed, right? So we want to do something really very close to what we did before, but we want it to be a little bit different. Use case 2, maybe the general structure of the program is the same, and we just want to cheat and borrow some of the components so that we don't have to type them in from scratch. Our case is going to be closer to the second. Okay, so where we're going to get the program from? We're going to start with a program called chaos.py that is in chapter 1. Okay, and how do we find that? Well, in your weekly schedule, you're going to find a link to download the solution code for all of the examples in Zelle 3rd edition. It's in a zip file, and when you expand that, you get a directory called code that is organized by chapter. And when you look under chapter 1, the only program that we can choose is chaos.py. Now, how can we get that into our project? Well, you could do one of two things. One is you could move it. The other is you could copy it. The problem with moving it, pulling it and dragging it, is then you lose it in its original directory. So what I do is I right click on chaos.py, come down and say I want to copy it. Okay. Then I go over into PyCharm, highlight the name of the project, right click, and say I want to paste it. Okay. And instead of doing all the chaos mathy stuff that Zelle does in chapter 1, we're going to do some pretty simple arithmetic stuff just to prove that we can print a series of numbers. So ours isn't going to be called chaos. Ours is going to be called math 505. Okay. So we change the name to that. We say OK. And I'm going to make this a little bigger so we can see it. And the first thing I want to point out is that we do have some style complaints. They typically get the gray squiggly underline. And that's because Zelle doesn't follow all the style rules for Python, mainly because he wants to save space in the book. Okay, so because of that, the function main should have 2 blank lines before it. So let's put a second one there. It should have 2 blank lines after it. Okay, and now it's a little bit hard to see, but there's a little gray squiggly at the end of line 13, and that's because we need a carriage return at the end of the line in order to get a last line that is a 0 length blank line. And all the squigglies are gone, and you can confirm that by going up into the right hand corner of the editor. And we'd had a gray box up there, which meant that we had some style warnings. But now when we hover over it with the cursor, it changes to a green check, and then it says no problems found. So we got rid of all that. Okay, so let's run the program chaos.py the way it was, just to make sure it still works the same way. Okay, so I'm going to right click in the editor and say I want to run it under the new name. And it asks for input, and the textbook I think he gives them a 0.5, and then it prints numbers that are mathematically chaotic, which is tremendously interesting to Zelle, less interesting to me. We'll find out how interesting it is to you. Okay, now time to change it. Okay, well, let's start at the top. We want a comment with the name of the program. Okay, he always uses this file colon. I've given up on that. So I'm going to get rid of file colon. Certainly not wrong. Okay. Uh, and this putting the name of the file in the program itself, in the file itself, is a little bit of a teacher learner trick. Probably isn't something that people do in their day jobs, but we're going to do it in our class. So it's not going to be called chaos.py. It's going to be called Math 505, no capitals, Math 505.py. And does it illustrate chaotic behavior? No. Here's what we want to do. We want to print a series of numbers, okay, beginning with 5, increasing by 5, ending with 50. Print a series of numbers beginning with 5, increasing by 5, ending with 50. Okay? All right. So how much of this code do we want to keep around? Well, what I like is the for loop. Okay? Because we have a for loop that goes approximately from 1 to 10. It says for I in range 10. And we're going to learn a little bit more about how to read this in a couple of chapters. But it goes around 10 times. So that's good. Do we want to print a polite message about what the program does? No, I don't think we have to. So I'm going to get rid of line 6. Do I have to calculate some fancy value that shows mathematically derived chaotic values? No, I don't. So I'm going to get rid of line 7. Okay. Do I want to print these mathematically derived chaotic values? No. I don't want to compute them, so I don't want to compute x. I want to get rid of line 10. And what I want to do is, right now I want to get rid of all my extra lines. So let's do that. Just have the for loop. We don't want a blank line at the beginning of the code block for the for loop. And now we're printing x. It turns out in a for loop, it always has this control variable. Okay? And it says for I in range 10. So every time through, I is going to take on a new value. So we don't want to print some computed thing. We want to print I itself. Okay? So just offhand, I mean, we'll learn the details when we get to the chapter for for loops. Just offhand, I think this is going to come pretty close to printing a series of numbers from 1 to 10. Is that our end goal? No, it's not. Then why are we doing it? Well, I think it's a great step toward our end goal because a series of numbers from 1 to 10 is only off of what we want by a factor of 5. And I know how that I'm going to be able to fix that. But first, let's prove to ourselves that we do print from 1 to 10. It turns out that we don't. Okay, let's run Math 505 And I'm going to double click to the right of the tab down here in the console. So I get a full page. And I go, oh no, it's printing from 0 to 9. Why does it do that? Okay, we'll double click up here again to go back. Well, it turns out that this expression, range 10, is a pretty powerful expression in Python, but it gives us a range of numbers, and it gives us 10 values. Unfortunately, it starts counting with 0, and it finishes with 10 minus 1, which is 9. So this turns out to be a great way to count from 0 to 9, which is not what we wanted to do. Okay, well, how can we fix that? Well, the brute force way to fix this, which is the way we're going to do it, is we're going to go to line 7. And we're just, instead of saying I want to print I, the variable name I, well, we're going to have an expression. We're just going to say I plus 1. Okay, we're going to adjust the whole thing up by 1. And what we're hoping to see is, instead of 0 through 9, we're expecting to see 1 through 10. So let's take a look. And because we already ran it once, we can just go down here and kind of hit the replay button. And I'm going to open that up and make it bigger. 1 through 10. All right, so now we're only off by a factor of 5. Okay, in this kind of approach where you kind of walk your way to the solution instead of trying to get everything right the first time, this is a very powerful approach. Okay, because we're doing something pretty simple, we're doing it in 2 steps. But if we were to do something a lot more complex, we might do it in 10 steps. Do step 1, change it a bit. Step 2, change it a little more. Step 3, getting closer and closer to the behavior that we want in the end, but not feeling compelled to get everything right, everything accomplished right out of the blocks. All right, here we go. So now we're off by a factor of 5. Okay, so it turns out that within the print, we can have an expression. Now we have I plus 1. If we want to multiply by 5, we have to surround the expression I plus 1 in parentheses. And then we have to multiply by 5. And we multiply with asterisk and then the multiplicand that we want, 5. Okay, so it's the quantity I plus 1, okay, which of course is going to change every time we go around the loop. And then we're going to multiply that times 5. And let's give that a look. I think that's going to do it. So let's run it. And I'm going to make it bigger so we can see it. And there it is. From 5 to 50 by 5s. Just what we wanted to do. Okay? So this is what you're going to do for your exercise 2. Let's undo that. Your formula is going to be different. So you're not going to be counting by 5s. You're going to be counting by something else. But you should begin with chaos.py, which you're able to download from the weekly schedule website and unzip and copy in here and rename to the name that you're going to have. And then you're going to make pretty similar changes to what I made to get a program that does prints out a series kind of like this one, but not based on 5s. Okay? So that's it. I'm going to say bye until next time. Bye-bye.